Greetings, friends, and happy Monday. Sam Mirejovsky here, News Talk 840 KXNT, Cinco de Mayo, or as some are calling it, Cinco de Porto. Well, you know, there's been quite a few deportations of late, and so some folks on the internet using that moniker. By the way, it is 9 years, Robbie, since Trump put up on his X account that picture of him eating a taco bowl with a happy Cinco de Mayo. The best taco bowls are made in Trump Tower Grill. I love Hispanics. You remember this? Of course. One of the to me, wildest things about that picture. Well, everybody focused obviously on his caption. This thing melted the internet for several days. The media breathlessly reported on it. But then, you know, one of the things to take away from the picture is also his office. Trump, this was in Trump Tower, back when Trump was still very much working, you know, as a developer. And it's a messy office full of pictures and awards in the background and plans, you know, rolled up plans, construction diagrams, drawings, etc., newspapers on his desk, and he's eating lunch at his desk. This is classic Trump back in the day. 9 years later, he's president for a second time, been to hell and back. And by the way, just on cue, his poll numbers are going back up, rolling average around 50, according to Rasmussen and Insider Advantage, the most accurate pollsters of the 2024 election. And it was interesting because as Matt Towery is the founder of Insider Advantage, and you know, he has been making the media rounds talking about how his polling company, including Rasmussen, Trafalgar, Emerson, RMG, that they've all been ranked at the very top, very low error rates. But what is, you know, fascinating to him is when all of the mainstream media, drive-by media, go to do their Trump 100 days in office stories and want to run with the narrative that Trump is somehow deeply unpopular 100 days in, they all go to the polls that did terribly. They go to Fox, they go to ABC, they go to all the polls that predicted that there was a Kamala bump, a surge. Remember this? Biden dropped out of the race, Kamala comes in, all of a sudden starts, you know, numbers going up and up and up, and we're told it's inevitable. President Kamala Harris. Anyway, all those polls turned out to be wrong. And all right, so that's just a note, right? Yes, you know, well, one thing that was interesting is Towery from Insider Advantage says that Trump is up 46 to 44 in his poll, and 10% are undecided. Isn't that interesting? So, you know, he thinks that about 70 to 80% of that will distribute to Trump, but they don't force people to choose. And see, a lot of the other polls do, or weight them more heavily anti-Trump by, of course, mixing in a lot more registered Democrats or high propensity Democrat voters over Republicans. So, all right. There we go. All right, I'm just painting a picture where we're at. Trump, of course, over the weekend gave a number of interviews. The NBC interview, of course, made big headlines. And one of the things that Trump talked about was the prospects of a third term. Now, the NBC host there talking to Trump, asking him, you know, it comes out and says, wait, are you planning to do this? Are you planning to ignore the Constitution and run for a third term? And I'll play this for you just after the break here. So I want you to hear it. But I first wanted to just say this. You know, Trump Trump does an excellent job turning this question around. He answers it. But he also talks about the deep bench of Republican talent that we now have. And I don't know if you saw this over the weekend. The JFK Leadership Award was given. Harvard went and gave it to someone named Mike Pence, former running mate of Trump's and vice president. This is a Profile in Courage Award. And I just want us to reflect on a time not that long ago where was 4 years and change. 4 years ago, Pence was vice president. Pence would have been the quote unquote heir apparent to Trump had Trump been elected for a second term in November of 2020. I feel that I don't often enough praise all that is good in life for having Trump lose in 2020, because imagine a world where Trump concludes a contested and I'm sure embattled second term in office from 2020 to 2021 to 2025, had Biden not been elected. And we're sitting here as Republicans and we'd have Mike Pence as some sort of, presumptive Republican nominee. I mean, I think for one, we certainly would lose with Mike Pence as a nominee. But what would that mean for the future of the party? What would that mean for the future of true, meaningful, long-lasting reform within Republican circles? And it wouldn't have been good. Instead, here we have J.D. Vance, we have Marco Rubio, we have an enormous retinue, I think, of very incredible, smart, and of course, ideologically, much better situated people than the Republican Party has ever had in my lifetime. This outdoes the era of Reagan. I mean, Reagan, after all, a transformational president, and who did he have waiting in the wings to take over? George H.W. Bush? What a joke. This is just, we just need to take a minute and be very grateful that things worked out the way that they did. Because now we have 4 years. And this is why Trump is very careful not to come out and say who he wants to replace him. This is, I think a foolish thing, would be a foolish thing to do. Vance needs to still prove himself. Marco Rubio, an enormous surprise. I've mentioned this a number of times, just absolutely killing it as Secretary of State. No doubt others as well will rise to the occasion. And so this, over the next 4 years period, to figure out who the next standard bearer is, and then to rally behind him. So I'll get into the interview. I'll tell you exactly what it is that Trump said to NBC News, throwing cold water on the idea of running for a third term. Media, of course, reacting to this predictably. I'll get to that as well. Sam Mirejovsky, News Talk 840, KXNT. Sam at whatsrightshow.com is my email. At What's Right Sam on X, formerly known as Twitter. Be right back in just a few minutes. Hi, welcome back. Sam Mirejovsky here behind the What's Right microphone. Greetings, friends. Hope you all had a good weekend. Indeed. Yes, well, it's Monday now, so that's in the rear view mirror. as I am busy at work. It's always like that Mondays. You know, you get to the office, you start doing work, you start getting in, and by the time, you know, noon rolls around, the weekend is a distant memory. Senator Mirejovsky, News Talk 840, KXNT, the What's Right show is brought to you by Sam and Ash Injury Law. In a crash, call Sam and Ash 702 820 1234, 702 820 1234, because you deserve what's right. Now, I just mentioning here the interview Trump sat down with NBC News with Kristen Welker and Welker, excuse me, and Welker right out of the gate asks Trump about 2028. Are you running? And of course, you know, this is how it works. They have to, all these reporters, these so-called journalists, they have to throw in their own snide remark because they're not actually interviewing Trump. They're debating him. That's really the best way to describe this. So it's a debate. So Trump goes in and, you know, of course, you know, they're asking, these are all the people that were asking Joe Biden what, you know, flavor ice cream he liked. Anyway, so this is how it started.
The Trump organization is selling hats that say Trump 2028.
Yeah.
Are you seriously considering a third term, Mr. President, even though it's prohibited by the Constitution? Or is this about staying politically viable?
I will say this. So many people want me to do it. I have never had requests so strong as that. But it's something that, to the best of my knowledge, you're not allowed to do. I don't know if that's constitutional that they're not allowing you to do it or anything else, but there are many people selling the 2028 hat. But this is not something I'm looking to do. I'm looking to have 4 great years and turn it over to somebody, ideally a great Republican, to carry it forward. But I think we're going to have 4 years, and I think 4 years is plenty of time to do something really spectacular.
And I, you know, of course, I agree with this. I think, you know, my assessment on this from the beginning has been that Trump's playing coy with it, really to keep, you know, everybody around the world guessing. And even here, he doesn't say, I mean, he says he's not going to do it. It's a pretty clear denial, but you see, he plays it up. He goes, listen, people really want me to do it. But no, I don't think it's legal. People in the media, of course, are saying, well, Trump's so stupid, he doesn't even know that this is like categorically unconstitutional. And I have to explain it to you again, right? It's fine. I'll do it. Well, not to you. You guys understand it, what he's doing. But he's playing to the ears of the various Chinese and, let's say, Russian or Iranian analysts who are listening to him. He said, well, it's not a no. It's not a no. We could be dealing with Trump for another 8 to 12 years, right? And that is not a bad thing for Trump to enjoy when dealing with people who really want us in a bad place. So then the question, Chris Welker turns to the subject of his, you know, of the movement and who takes it over, right? Who takes over the Making America Great Again movement? And here's how the question was posed, and the answer, I think, is what Trump says is actually very true, and something what we're all thinking.
You have built a political movement that has transformed the Republican Party. It's transformed the country, quite frankly.
Political movement in history, MAGA. Make America Great Again.
When you look to the future, Mr. President, do you think the MAGA movement can survive without you as its leader?
Yes, I do.
What gives you
I think it's so strong, and I think we have tremendous people. I think we have a tremendous group of people. We talked about a number of them. You look at Marco, you look at J.D. Vance, who's fantastic. You look at, I could name 10, 15, 20 people right now just sitting here.
Yeah, and he's not wrong. By the way, you know, again, I've said it before, mention it again, Marco Rubio absolutely killing it right now. And surprising to me because of how forceful and unapologetic he has been for the Making America First, or the America First agenda, right? So, but by the way, in April, early April, Tucker Carlson was at a Heritage Foundation event. He was up on stage and was doing a little interview. And he was asked about J.D. Vance, and he said this, which I think is about as high a praise as you can get from Tucker Carlson.
J.D. Vance is the future, period. And you'll never hear me say nice things about politicians. I know them all. There are very few I like. But most of them are kind of what you think they are. Actually, they're way worse than you think they are. And ask their wives, But J.D. Vance is the best I've ever met, ever. He's the combination of intelligence, decency, wisdom, emotional self-control. Like, I don't have that. It's incredible. He's incredible. And genuine affection for Trump and loyalty to Trump is not a pose. He actually really likes Trump. Thinks Trump's an amazing person. They get along really well. It's not fake. And so that's just thrilling for me that there's someone like that. The Republicans have not had that.
Yeah, and it's exactly right. Going back 4.5 years, Mike Pence, Vice President of the United States, who had Trump been reelected in 2020, would now have either been president, would be president, or would have lost, because he probably would have been the nominee, would have lost in a general election to some Democrat, possibly Gavin Newsom. So it's just important perspective on this, that Trump now isn't just embarking on a successful term in office. He's not doing just that. He also has built around him a movement that is becoming, slowly but surely, larger than him. This is the hallmark of success, of political success. And one of the best things, and we can thank, if you believe, I do, because a number of people have told me this, that Don Jr. is the man principally responsible for making the case to Trump, to his father, for J.D. Vance during the primary when Trump was sitting down. And folks, I mentioned this to you at the time when we were speculating about who the vice presidential pick would be. And I said it's the most important decision for Trump. It's everything, because, remember what I said? It's because he'll have just 4 years in office. And Trump is coming in with far greater knowledge and awareness. His eyes opened to the dangers and perils of Washington, D.C., to the way the world works politically in this country. Trump, I think, no comparison virtually to his second 4 years from his first. I mean, it just he's a different guy, shaped by everything he experienced, not just in his first term, but especially in his post-presidency, or in the interregnum period between, when he was out of office and reelected. And that shaped him, and it gave him perspective. And the kind of change that needs to happen from the Department of Justice, the FBI, and DOJ, for political reasons, getting rid of these NGOs and getting the right people on these various boards, all of the stuff, will take longer. I'm sorry, longer than 4 years. So having, a political, a succession plan here is critical. It's everything. I mean, look at how many, 45 years or so, maybe 46 years, Warren Buffett, the head of Berkshire Hathaway, just now stepping down. When you get a good leader in business, they stay. The presidency forces you out every 8 years. It just is how it is. Actually forces you out every 4. One time you get to fight to remain. So Trump really here, it's all about the succession plan. And the succession plan is solid. Now, let's contrast that to the Democrats. By the way, Stephen A. Smith wrote a piece about this, and gave some media appearances and really had some harsh words for the Democrats, even suggesting perhaps he himself would run. I'll share that with you when we come back. Sam Mirejovsky, News Talk 840 KXNT. Greetings, friends, and welcome to the What's Right Show, your place for common sense conservatism, Monday through Friday, 1 to 3 p.m., here on News Talk 840 KXNT. Sam at whatsrightshow.com. That's my email. Please email me. I do check my email personally and respond personally as often as I possibly can. So do shoot me an email if you have any questions, comments, or concerns. I also can be reached on Twitter, now referred to as X. This is Elon Musk's platform that, by the way, it seemed to me that the Canadians want to ban Mark Carney. I'll get to that a little bit later. Fascinating stuff. I think Canada is going full communist, which, anyway, we'll get to that. So on X, you can find me at What's Right Sam, at What's Right Sam. So Trump, of course, while getting pressed by NBC News about whether or not he's actually going to run for a third term, he says no. And then he talks about, naturally, the deep bench of Republican talent, of America First, Make America Great Again movement talent that we have. And the conversation then subsequently shifts to the Democrats. Now, this was an interesting part because, of course, I think this is an important part of the conversation. Well, I mean, the Democrats don't have anybody, and this is exactly what Trump told Kristen Welker. Have a listen.
You know what I can't name? I can't name one Democrat. I mean, I look at the Democrats, they're in total disarray. They have a new person named Crockett. I watched her speak the other day. She's definitely a low IQ person. And they said, she's the future of the party. I said, you have to be kidding. I don't know what they're going to do. And I really believe in a two-party system. Because it's good to be challenged. It's really good to have a two-party. It's good. Being challenged is okay. It keeps you sharp. I don't know what they're going to do. They have nobody.
They don't. It's absolutely true. And by the way, Stephen A. Smith, the commentator, has been on a tear lately criticizing the Democratic Party. And he's been going at it, and the Hill did a write-up about it because of a comment at the CNN State of the Union show on Sunday. Jake Tapper asked him about the continued talk about Stephen A. Smith running in the 2028 presidential election. Tapper comes out and says, well, listen, if you're going to run, okay, if you're actually going to run, would you run as a Democrat, right? Would you run as a Democrat? And this is the answer.
If you were to run for president, though, it would be as a Democrat or no?
You know what? I'm an independent. I'm a registered independent. I would lean, who leans left. I'm fiscally conservative when it comes to my money. I'm socially liberal. I'm liberal when it comes to social issues pretty much across the board. I believe in living and let living. So I'm a moderate, and I would say if I had to run, it would be as a Democrat, but I'm not happy with the Democratic Party. So the Democratic Party is presently constructed. It would pretty much need to be purged in order for me to assume that I would want to be associated with them and I would garner their support, because I don't like the way they've gone about doing a lot of things for a very, very long period of time. And I think that I don't view Donald Trump as winning the election. I view the Democrats as losing the election, as absolutely positively blowing it with some of their actions. And that's why I think that, again, if somebody was to associate me with that, the party is presently constructed where it leads so extremely left, or at least it spent the vast majority of time doing that. Oh, that is not something that I would vibe with at all.
Well, Well, set aside the comment of Trump not winning the election. Trump did win the election because Trump ran on a platform of ideas that people wanted. I think Trump coming out of the 4 years of getting beat up in the media, getting sued, getting criminally indicted, prosecuted, even convicted. I don't think a lot of people who voted for Trump, I'm not saying a majority, but I'm saying a lot of people, particularly in the middle, that voted for Trump, didn't like him. They just liked his platform. And yeah, that's a platform that ran in opposition to the Democrats. But anyway, so setting that aside, let's look at the rest of it. You have someone, and he says he's an independent. This guy's a Dem, 100%. Stephen A. Smith is a Dem. Now, he is not a woke, ideologue. He's not an identity politic Democrat. He's a common sense guy. And for him, the Democratic Party, as presently constituted, is a dumpster fire. I mean, objectively, it's a mess. And it's a mess primarily because it has become, the party has absolutely allowed itself to be taken over by people who deny basic biological facts about gender, folks that sympathize with violent, murderous terrorist groups, anti-Semitic wackos. I mean, those are not one and the same, but seem to have sympathies for one another, by radical environmentalists, and by other mentally deranged, weak-kneed clowns and buffoons. Okay, that's the Democratic Party, and it's a lot of it is just performance art. By the way, when Trump comes out there and says, "Oh yeah," and Jasmine Crockett, who is a Texas congresswoman, you know her, she's got the big hair and she talks in a very ghetto way, which I understand, Robbie, is affected, right? I don't know if you know this, there's some tapes of her from way back in the day, like her college years, and she sounds, can I say it, normal? She just sounds like a normal person. And she's gotten this, ghetto hood rat accent thing going on. It's something that she developed for her political career. That's my only point. This is a side note. Well, anyway, Trump mentions her as like, what do the Democrats have? They've got Jasmine Crockett. And what happens? Jasmine Crockett, reacts. This is one of her reactions here.
Instead of publicly calling us the N-word, they use racist epithets and suggest that we're ghetto or unqualified or diversity hires, even though we're all more, oftentimes than not, more educated and qualified than they are. I have news for you. These attacks are not new because Jim Crow never died. He just lied in wait.
Okay, so it's hard to tell if this was her response because the interview on NBC aired at 6. This was a speech at 7, so it was the same day. Anyway, she did write something on X. For you to be in charge, I guess this is to Trump, right? This is a message to the president on Twitter. For you, Trump, to be in charge of the whole country, you sure do have my name in your mouth a lot. Every time you say my name, you're reminding the world that you're terrified of smart, bold black women telling the truth and holding you accountable. So keep talking. Now, what's the interesting thing here? What's the what do you have to note about this? The interesting thing is, of course, Trump said nothing about Crockett being female or being African American. And this is, by the way, the playground of low IQ Democrats, right? You make everything about gender, about race, about sexual orientation, about identity. You make everything here about that. And you stay as far away from substance as possible. This is this is why I don't think this is resonating or necessarily moving voters the way it maybe once did. So this is why when Stephen A. Smith says he's going to run, well, yeah, but I'd have to purge the party. He literally have to purge the party of a lot of really terrible, awful people. The problem is they're quite deeply ingrained on the political scene. And it reminds me of a little bit, in a small way, of where the Republican Party was in 2015 and 2016. Because I'm going to still maintain that was one of the most interesting, truly interesting, and seismic shifts, political shifts that we've ever seen within our party. Certainly, yeah. Again, in my time on this planet, from the 80s on, Trump comes in as a 1% candidate, and he succeeds. Eventually, it took him 9 years, but he succeeds in really taking over the entire Republican Party. Now, can somebody come along and do that with the Democrats? I think that's one of the questions a lot of people are asking. Is there someone that can do that? It's actually the wrong question. The actual real question to ask is, will the Democrats, the way the party is set up, allow that to happen? Because I don't know if the rank and file voters are ready to rally around a candidate that actually could bring back labor jobs, bring back blue collar jobs, right? Bring back the middle of America to the Democratic Party, because I don't think the party is capable of shedding its own cancers. We did it as Republicans. We made it happen. We looked Jeb Bush and the Bush family dynasty in the eye and said, no, thank you. It crashed and burned. And the best part about it is that the Republican Party did not have internal controls preventing an outsider like Trump from seizing momentum and ultimately winning the nomination. But the Democratic Party does. You have the superdelegates, you got the party grandees, you have the kind of people there that ultimately have a say in who becomes the nominee and who doesn't. And one of the things that you'll find is when there are Democrats out there that speak reason, guess who attacks them? Primarily other Democrats. We talked last week, not that long ago, giant battle within the Democratic Party between, two important leaders. We have the Ragin' Cajun. This one went back and forth, right? We had David Hogg arguing with and getting, basically saying he's going to come in and primary Democrats in the primaries that that the party wanted to get rid of. And James Carville literally had a cow. So I don't think it's going to be possible. I'm up against the clock here. I got to take a quick break, but when we come back, as a fascinating question is, can this kind of reform even take place within the Democratic Party? Or are there built-in controls, inflexibilities that will prevent it? And I tend to believe that there will be. Sam Mirejovsky, News Talk 840 KXNT. The What's Right show is brought to you by Sam & Ash Injury Law, because you deserve what's right. Sam Mirejovsky, News Talk 840, KXNT. Greetings, friends. Welcome to the program. By the way, the Democratic brand so toxic that even LA County Sheriff Alex Villanueva on Saturday announced that he is ending his 44 years as a registered Democrat. This is, well, he's joining the Republicans in California. Remember, I've mentioned there's something afoot in California in the Democratic Party. They're losing ground and Republicans perhaps ascendant. Here's from a press conference. This was, this was just over the weekend. Here's LA County Sheriff Villanueva.
And if you have cameras, get them rolling. Share this on social media.
Cell phone video.
I'm leaving the party of paid protests, purple hair, and pronouns. I'm joining the party of faith, family, and freedom.
I'm leaving, he says, as of today, I'm leaving the party of paid protests, purple hair, and pronouns. I'm joining the party of faith, family, and freedom, referring to the Republican Party. Now, this is obviously, big, and incidentally, right? Paid protest, purple hair, and pronouns. This is part of what is structurally problematic, to the core of the Democratic Party. The party would have to repudiate all of this. And I think one of the biggest challenges of it, besides just the inflexibility and change resistance that is built into the Democratic Party organization, is that for 4 years, we had a Democrat president, Joe Biden, who was a centrist Democrat when he was cogent once upon a time, who, by virtue of either his condition or being compromised in various ways, became really a radical progressive. And it was during this time that we had things that were, of course, happened that were really egregious. The consequences of it were awful, like, for example, the open borders. But you also had lesser things, like a year ago, the White House Easter celebration getting hijacked completely by the trans agenda. I mean, we had a trans influencer in the White House bearing his breasts. And, the person was eventually, chided and whatnot, reprimanded. But still, I mean, that's the kind of stuff that was occurring. So ranging from the deeply consequential to the well, but I want to discount the stuff that was the culture stuff that was happening too. I mean, it was all of it together was a complete and total abdication of the Democratic Party. A formally, pro-worker kind of call it, heartland of America type party, or at least that's how they portrayed themselves, to suddenly becoming this caricature of political extremism. And so I think a lot of people are looking at the party today and going, well, you know what? It was pretty freaking radical under Joe Biden. And I think still a lot of, NPC type people who are not non-playing characters, right? They're just kind of going along. They're plugging into the mainstream news. They don't know that Joe Biden really was, or they just can't believe, they wrap their heads around the fact that Joe Biden was mentally incompetent while he was president. So they look at it and they go, well, look, it was pretty radical when Joe, from Scranton, Pennsylvania was running things. My goodness, what's the country going to look like when we have a Democrat from California like Gavin Newsom come in and start running things? Or J.B. Pritzker, gosh forbid. the big man from Illinois. By the way, he did a May the 4th be with you post that was so cringy, Robbie. I mean, he's sitting there in some, this is a lightsaber in hand. His wife thing is dressed like Princess Leia. The whole thing is so bad. Yeah, he's dressed as Obi-Wan Kenobi, but body type more like Jabba the Hutt. Okay, Sam Mirejovsky, News Talk 840 KXNT. By the way, let me give you an example of a Democrat who bucked his party, and now all knives are out for him. All knives. They're going after him, hook, line, and sinker. That's exactly my point of how these things are going down. Okay, stay tuned. I got a lot to cover. Rarely wrong, always right. Sam Mirejovsky, News Talk 840 KXNT. Greetings, friends, and welcome to the What's Right Show. Sam at what'srightshow.com. That's my email. And of course, on X, formerly known as Twitter, at What's Right Sam. Okay, I don't know if you saw this, but India has just proposed zero tariffs. Mutual tariffs at zero, both ways on a few items, specific things. Auto parts, steel, and pharmaceuticals. Now, you have to sort of unpackage this a little bit because, of course, India is a major producer of pharmaceuticals, and we do get some Indian pharmaceuticals here in the country, so that would benefit them. My understanding is India also makes a fair amount of auto parts, but that U.S. steel could be sent to India, and that, of course, would be good for the U.S. So this might be the makings or broad outline of a decent deal. So follow this. And again, India has already expressed interest in dealing with the U.S., and perhaps foregoing a more direct relationship with China. So this is what we need. China, by the way, you see this, Robbie? Interesting. The Chinese are being even more opaque than usual. What do I mean by that? The Chinese, okay, I mean, not the Chinese people, but the Chinese government, the commies in Beijing, they're not known for being very palms up, okay? They hide, they cheat, they, sneak around on things. And one thing that, the Wall Street Journal reported today, well, it's interesting. There's certain indicators in the Chinese economy, anything from soybean production to the number of acres of real estate put up for sale by the Chinese government. Just a wide range of data. China has stopped publishing hundreds upon hundreds of data points on its economy. Well, it's okay. It's interesting because why? It's bad. That's the conclusion to draw. Now, I'm of the belief that China was never very truthful about these statistics, but I look, it's just, it's even things like cremation data. They were, you think, for example, you think China was being truthful about COVID data. I never believed that for a minute. But the Chinese authorities, per the Wall Street Journal, haven't given any reason for ending or withholding data. But the missing numbers, per the Wall Street Journal, come as the world's second biggest economy, China, has stumbled under the weight of excessive debt, a crumbling real estate market, and other troubles. Like what, maybe? A trade war with Trump and the U.S.? Perhaps. So, the data just stopped middle of last week. So interesting. Now, speaking of publications that piqued my interest, New York Magazine put out a piece, this was published on the 2nd, about Pennsylvania's Senator John Fetterman. Now, it came just as there was a video of Fetterman sitting on the airplane. I don't know, did you see this too? That's interesting. It wasn't that interesting, but it was Fetterman there. You could tell, he's a big guy, tall guy, bald, and he's sitting up in first class in an airplane. And you can see the pilot, based on the uniform. One of the two pilots comes out of the cockpit to talk to him, and it seems it's because he doesn't have his seatbelt visible. A pilot at one point in time offers Fetterman a seatbelt extender so that the seatbelt is visible over his signature hoodie. So I think the issue was he had it buckled, but underneath his hoodie. Ew, was it skin on skin, Robbie? Anyway, I'm bringing this up because as that video was making the rounds, almost on cue, New York Mag published a left-wing, this is a publication that goes after Trump all the time, a hit piece on Fetterman. Now, New York Magazine doesn't normally go after Democrats. What gives? Well, it quotes a number of former staffers, including Fetterman's former chief of staff, Adam Gentelson, who described Fetterman, him and other aides, as erratic, paranoid, prone to mood swings. He has conspiratorial thinking and megalomania. This is crazy. This Gentelson guy, who was his former chief of staff, wrote a 1,600-word letter in May of 2024 to Fetterman's doctor at Walter Reed, suggesting that the senator's behavior was induced by his failure to take medications, and that he was on a bad trajectory. Now, what was his behavior at this point? If you'll recall, Fetterman is one of the few elected Democrats who has zero tolerance for Hamas, for Palestine, for anything having to do of giving any kind of quarter to Palestinian sympathizers. He's put up pictures of the hostages from day one in and around his office. Some of his so-called controversial social media posts have aligned him with conservative figures, okay? And I'll tell you, I have to admit, I haven't spent a lot of time thinking about Fetterman, okay? If you go back to the campaign when Fetterman was first elected, well, the whole thing was a mainstream media setup. They ran the same playbook on Fetterman that they did, the mainstream media did, that they did for Joe Biden. Now, these two are more connected than just that, but just bear with me here. Let me explain. Fetterman had just had a stroke. He was obviously unwell. He had been a reliable Democrat. He'd been a left of center guy. He was going to be the perfect candidate. He was a man of the people. He'd already won elections. And so they ran him. And they ran him against Dr. Oz, who lost essentially that race because he was a carpetbagger. He didn't really live in, Pennsylvania, and the people smelled a rat. That's what people there tell me on the ground, at least. But I digress. So, Fetterman runs an election. The media cover for him. There were a handful of reporters, including one gal. Where was it? Was it ESPN? Was it the ESPN reporter? Some person basically ends up getting fired because she wants to raise Fetterman's capacity in an article, in a piece, to do a story on it, and gets fired over it. The whole thing was absolute a circling of wagons around Fetterman by the Democratic Party establishment, the mainstream media, etc., to protect Fetterman and to get him elected. So he gets elected. And then, do you remember, he has this odd meltdown? Now, I got to take a break. Do you remember this? He ends up in the hospital. Now, this, I think this was a turning point. And I'll get to how this links up to Biden. Because one of the takeaways here is, my humble opinion, is that when you hear Democrats denying, oh, how could we know about Biden? Oh, we're just blindsided by, they were doing the same exact thing, the same play with Fetterman. And just like with Joe Biden, I'll explain this when we come back, it got out of hand. The plan that they had couldn't work. Sam, what are you talking about? I'll get there. I'll get there. Stay tuned. Sam Mirejovsky, News Talk 840, KXNT. The What's Right show's brought to you by Sam and Ash Injury Law. In a crash, call Sam and Ash, 702-820-1234, because you deserve what's right.
The Sam and Ash team, they wanted me to have the best care. They had my interests at heart. I have an enormous amount of gratitude. I cannot say enough thank you.
Now, I don't know if you heard the news yesterday over the weekend. Trump apparently, if he gets his way, then Abrego Garcia will go from Maryland man to Birdman of Alcatraz. Sam Mirejovsky, News Talk 840, KXNT. Welcome back to the What's Right show. Yes, Trump wants to reopen Alcatraz, and I love it. Have you been, by the way, anytime recently, Robbie? It's crumbling. The place is falling down. It's mismanaged. And it's just absolutely covered in bird feces everywhere. I mean, it's painted white. There's areas of it where you can't even go. And the stench, in spite of the fact that there is a strong, stiff sea breeze blowing 24/7, you can't even inhale. So, and I don't know, why can't they go? It's a park, right? Why can't they go in and power wash it? I literally don't understand it. So I think, yeah, I mean, you know, if these bad people here want to stay in the country, boy, have we got a place for you. You know, the worst part about Alcatraz, Robbie, was, and I remember reading this from accounts of prisoners who had spent time there. The worst part about it is you would be in your cell in the miserable little, concrete box that you were sentenced to for the rest of your natural life. And New Year's Eve, if the wind was just right, you would hear people partying it up on the wharf there in San Francisco. That's a special kind of torture. When you're, in somewhere Colorado in a Supermax prison, you don't hear anything. Imagine here you're like listening to people out there having a gay old time. Gay as in happy, okay, not gay. Okay, let's San Francisco. I guess I had to clarify. Fetterman, let's talk about Fetterman instead. All right. Just before the break, New York Mag does a hit piece, mention this published on the 2nd. And it's right as that video is surfacing of Fetterman, quote unquote, acting erratic. So it's almost supporting documentation for a case of removal. Now, why do Democrats want to remove Fetterman, and why now? See, here's the thing. They got him in there knowing that he was easy to manipulate. They knew he had a stroke. They knew that he was sort of going to be led around, and so he would be like a Joe Biden. They could just tell him what to do. They could, puppet master him around. But then he had this breakdown because he was resisting it. He goes to the hospital, emerges, a couple weeks later, 3 weeks later, comes out of the hospital, and suddenly is talking about, being a radically independent Democrat. And from that point forward, see, the way I read the story in the New York Mag, the way I read it is all of these aides are frustrated that they can't control him. What if Joe Biden decided to go against the machine? Now, you argue that he did when he insisted on running for re-election, which really was direction coming from Jill and family. But what if he had bucked them earlier on? So I have this theory that I've had pretty much since 2020, and that is that the Democrats always intended to dispose of Joe Biden and had believed very strongly when they put the deal together to have him run for president and win in the primary, combining him, joining him up with Kamala Harris, because I'm convinced the Democrats always thought that Kamala Harris would come in, swoop in, take over, be the first female president. Joe Biden would step away for health reasons, personal reasons, whatever, offered a dignified exit, and Kamala Harris would become president and then run for re-election. Now, it didn't happen because Kamala Harris was absolutely wretched. She was insufferable. And people inside of the team, the Biden team, couldn't stand her. Now, the parallel to Fetterman is the people inside on the Fetterman team were hoping that, that he was just going to play ball and that was going to be good enough. Now we're in the phase where he isn't. And so this is one of the first public broadsides aimed at removing him. The problem is I don't think it's going to work. Though his wife is a radical. Okay, his wife, Giselle, Fetterman's wife, is an absolute radical. There was talk originally of, if you'll recall, that he would run, and then, they were, I think early on, maybe trying to pressure him to step aside, and there was talk of her taking the seat over. And I don't think she could have won it on her own merits. Now, the reason that they're bringing this up now is now would be a time to get a candidate in there. Now would be a time to replace him with a more reliable Democrat. Interesting how it seems to coincide with David Hogg's proclamation not too long ago that he would spend tens of millions of dollars of Democrat National Committee cash to primary unreliable Democrats. Now, I think when Hogg says this, because Hogg is a radical, Hogg is a progressive, Hogg is a wokester. I think when Hogg says unreliable Democrats, what I think he means, not people who aren't going to win elections, but people who are not going to advance the left-wing agenda. I think that's what he's getting at. So if that's the case, this all seems a little bit too coincidental, methinks. I don't know. I think the Democrats have a problem running people for office who don't have mental capacity. They're literally willing to run a dementia patient and or a stroke victim just to win an election. They don't care about the candidate. They care about the platform. They just want to win. This is what we're up against as Republicans. I mean, some of you with your strange scruples about, well, we got to do this right. We Republicans are above this, and I mean, they're playing dirty. They're playing dirty, and they're getting away with it. But one thing that is a takeaway now from this Fetterman piece, regardless of how the order of things, is they're definitely trying to oust him. They're ousting him because he is more conservative than they would like, which then takes us to the state of the Democratic Party. And beyond the ideology of it, you cannot, I cannot, we should never allow any Democrat to disavow and excuse, kind of brush aside this thing with Joe Biden that they just didn't know, or it wasn't immediately obvious, and it was just a crazy once in a thing kind of whatever, whoopsie daisy, because they did this with Fetterman concurrently. It's important to note this. You do it once, it's okay. Do it twice during the same period, it starts to seem like something that you're intending to do. I'm just pointing this out. So this is just, it's interesting stuff. Meanwhile, the Republican Party is actually led by someone with immense charisma, with immense charm, with huge likability and a following, loyal following. And you've got the people in the mainstream media saying, well, Trump's losing his marbles and he's crazy and this and that. They wish they had a Trump. They don't have a Trump. They've got a Crockett, whatever the hell that is. Sam Mirejovsky, News Talk 840. Be right back, folks. Don't go anywhere. Greetings, friends. Welcome to the What's Right show. I had to share this story here, published in the New York Post. This is a divorce lawyer who has been charged in a cold case stabbing death of his own client. So the allegation here is that a divorce attorney stabbed to death his own client. Now, what could compel an attorney, and I say this as a lawyer, and so always, bemused by some of these stories. This one, of course, is horrendously tragic. What do these lawyers do? Where do these bad lawyers come from? Well, it's not funny. But it kind of is. The New York Post, citing prosecutors in Cleveland, Ohio, say that Gregory Moore, 51, back in, 2013, killed a 53-year-old nurse and mother of 4, Eliza Sherman. This is the allegation. All right, they announced this on Friday. Moore, the attorney, allegedly planned the deadly attack to stop her divorce case, which was set to begin the day after she was murdered. So prosecutors here are claiming that this lawyer wasn't ready to go to court on his case, that he was representing his client on. So instead, he just murdered her. For the sake of my profession, Robbie, I hope there's more to the story. I've always said, okay, can I just back up here? A little inside baseball here, folks. I went to law school, and by the way, met some great people, including my law partner, Ash Watkins. Okay. I also met some weirdos, because a lot of lawyers are weird. Okay. And law school, generally speaking, not every law school, but law school, generally speaking, isn't, an asshole factory. They kind of teach you to be a jerk. They teach you how to be very selfish. And, it's not like any other school I've ever had, in the sense that, for example, if you're doing finals, maybe this changed in the era of COVID, but if you have a final, you have to take the final when it's available. You can't reschedule it or anything. Now, bring this up because it is intended to teach you as an aspiring lawyer how, if a court says you've got a deadline, or a court says it's the start of a trial, or the court says that you have to give arguments on an appeal, that's when it starts. You're completely at the mercy of the judge. You can't not show up. So I had this classmate who, we are all fairly certain he faked a seizure just to get out of a final. I'm not going to mention the person's name. Yeah, well, as I said, it was a he. He faked a seizure. Okay, and the reason we say it's because he had this medical episode, he claimed, and then was partying and drinking later that night with people. So not typically the kind of behavior that you do if you've had a serious brush with death. But yeah, they carted him off. Ambulance came, firefighters, everybody tore in there, put him on a little stretcher and carried him out. And but he had a chance to look at the exam, at the exam question, and then he could go and study it, and then he could take it later, and he did very well on that exam. I just am saying. But killing a client, my God, Robbie, that is something else. So I hope for the sake of everybody involved, this is not true, but there it is. That's the allegation. The guy will go on trial later this year. Speaking of trial, Diddy, P. Diddy, is his trial started today in it started today in New York, and he has you know what's interesting about him? He has a what's her name? Is it Linda Moreno? Is that who it is? Linda Moreno. Yeah. She is one of the top jury consultants in the country, and she's been retained by Diddy's team. Remember the movie Runaway Jury? Gene Hackman. Well, may he rest in peace. Gene Hackman, great actor, unbelievable actor, and he played a jury consultant in Runaway Jury. I just saw that movie again recently. Very good flick. Mostly believable. Anyway, but regardless, so Linda Moreno is a criminal defense attorney, but she specializes in picking juries. And there's a whole art to it. Like if you haven't seen the movie Runaway Jury, it's just there are people out there who do nothing other than pick jurors. This is how Dr. Phil got his start. He was a jury consultant. He could read people. And, if you're a trial attorney, the number one most important thing, if you're not busy killing your client, is picking the jury. Well, I had to tie it back to something, Robbie. So yeah, it's picking the jury because it comes down to the jury. You can make the same argument to 3 or 4 or 5 different juries. You're going to get different results. And the example, the best example I can give you is that, your typical jury in Manhattan would have convicted Trump of anything. Not because the case against him was good, not because it was even convincing, not because it had any standing in law, but simply because, statistically speaking, jurors in Manhattan would hate Trump. So, that's the state of things. Okay, I'm just saying. So the case is jury selection is going to take a while. They're going to go through every single juror. They're going to go through something called voir dire, where you ask the jurors questions about their background and things that that may see if there's anything disqualifying. You know how it works. You've seen that part of it. So very high profile case. Diddy, by the way, turned down a plea deal. I didn't see what the plea deal actually consisted of. But the team, his team turned it down. So he's going to trial and probably is going to get convicted. I think he's going to get convicted. It's just the volume of evidence here apparently is significant. So we'll see. We'll follow this trial a little bit here because these things interest me. And of course, I'm a lawyer, so I like to follow these high profile cases. Okay, so I got to tell you, did you see this? Speaking of, in our conversation on insufferable Democrats, Michelle Obama went on a podcast. This is with a guy named Stephen Bartlett, The Diary of a CEO. And Michelle Obama went on to complain about how expensive her life was in the White House. Here's what she said. This is just
it's expensive to live in the White House. As many people don't know, much is not covered. You're paying for every bit of food that you eat. You're not paying for housing and the staff in it, But everything, even travel, if you're not traveling with the president, if your kids are coming on a Bright Star, which is the First Lady's plane, we had to pay for their travel to be on the plane. It is an expensive proposition, and you're running for 2 years and not earning an income.
What does the president pay? Barack was making, what, $400K a year? You live in the most expensive government-subsidized housing on the planet. Am I right? Now, it's true. You can't just order anything you want. I mean, if there's a state function, the government picks it up. But if it's your family's meal, you have to pay for the groceries. But you have a chef that is paid for. You have butlers. You've got people doing your cleaning, your laundry, waiting on you hand and foot. This is not shabby living, folks. Now, compared to her cushy life now on Martha's Vineyard with millions and millions of dollars of disposable income, let's put it into perspective. I could see how the years of the White House were rough on Michelle. But, this is awful. And the Democrats are still rallying behind her. I guess what's funny is Trump had his own moment on Sunday about prices. And he said something that to me is so innocuous. This is the doll thing, right? But let me give you the full context. Here's what Trump, with Kristen Welker, NBC, the interview that aired on Sunday. Here's what was said. Okay. And at the very end of it is the comment about the dolls.
Well, prices are already going up on some popular items. Tires, strollers.
This is such a dishonest interview already. Prices are down on groceries. Prices are down for oil. Prices are down for all energy. Prices are down at tremendous numbers for gasoline. And let me tell you, when you have the big thing, what he did, he spent like a stupid person, which he was, but he spent like a very stupid person, and that was bad for inflation. But what really killed us with inflation was the price of energy. It went up to $3.90, even $4, and in California, $5 and $6, right? Okay. I have it down to $1.98 in many states right now. When you go that much lower on energy, which is ahead of my prediction, because I really thought I could get it down into the 250s. We have it down at $1.98 in numerous places. But when you say costs are going up, even mortgage rates are going down.
Well, but let me give you some examples. These are actual examples. So you're saying the prices are going down. Some prices are going up. Tires, strollers, some clothing in the wake of your tariffs.
That's peanuts compared to energy. Energy is 60% of the cost.
But sir, you campaigned on a promise to bring prices down on day
Well, I don't know. When you say strollers are going up, what kind of a thing? I'm saying that gasoline is going down. Gasoline is thousands of times more important than a stroller someplace.
But what do you say to Americans who say they voted for you because they want and they need relief right now?
And they're getting it.
Right now? What about those
even mortgage rates?
Different items I just
Mortgage rates are going down despite the fact that we have a stubborn Fed.
But you said even dolls could cost a couple bucks more.
Maybe they might, but you don't need to have, as I said, $35. You can have 2, 3, 4 and save a lot of money. We don't need to feed the beast.
And here's what Trump means, of course. Every one of us that has kids understands this. There's all this junk toys coming from China. Cheap, junky, plastic, garbage toys that unfortunately have become disposable, that fill landfills, that we buy for nothing, we fill landfills with. It used to be that you'd buy 1 quality, 2 quality toys, and we cherish those toys, right? It's just the consumerism of it. But everybody, I tell you, everybody's piling on to Trump, and then they're swooning over Michelle Obama for saying, oh, it was so expensive living in the White House. Oh, these people make me sick. Sam Mirejovsky, News Talk 840. Be back in just a moment. Greetings and welcome back. Sam Mirejovsky, News Talk 840 KXNT. Listener SW just emailed me at sam@whatsrightshow.com. That's my email. Sam, I know where those bad attorneys come from. For example, in Canada, you can go to law school for $7,000. Just imagine what you'd get for that in a Canadian attorney. That's funny. By the way, I will say this. I mean, it's the pricing of schools. It's such a joke. Colleges. So SW, I'll say one thing. I don't know that schooling is better or worse based on price. Some of the worst law schools in the country here in the U.S. are some of the most expensive. And particularly these unaccredited law schools. What's interesting is I think the whole idea is that they get students in who are not qualified to be lawyers, and then they write a check for a lot of money, $70,000 first year, or 2 years, and then they drop out or they get kicked out because they can't meet basic requirements. So it's just not always about the money, but that's funny. And speaking of Canada, this is wild stuff. The new prime minister, the minority party, Liberal Party, they're not the plurality. I want a plurality of the votes. And his name is Mark Carney. And he ran as a complete centrist. And he gets up to deliver a big speech, his first big speech as prime minister. And what does he say? First off, he goes, I want all cars pre-2000 off the roads. I want cars with tint to remove their tint. I want cars that are lifted to have their lift kits down. It's like basically going to be moving everything to electric and newer cars. This is going to be great for their new trading partner, China. China can make them lots of clean cars. This is wild stuff. By the way, the GM plan had to cut a shift in Ontario. They're just not going to have, they're scaling back, right? Production. But yeah, so anyway, Carney made that pronouncement. And then there was this rather ominous diatribe on social media platforms, U.S. social media platforms. I wonder who he's talking about. Have a listen.
American online platforms have become seas of racism, misogyny, anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, and hate in all its forms. And they're being used by criminals to harm our children. My government will act. And today we're announcing our plan to fight crime, to protect Canadians, and to build communities that are safe, secure, and strong. A plan to make Canada secure, to make Canada strong.
Sounds like they may intend to ban Twitter, to ban X. I keep saying here, folks, that, if something is good enough for Mark Carney in Canada to ban, you ought to be on it. So I'm going to keep saying this until you all follow me and are all on X, because Elon Musk needs us. If you go on X, it's free, open up an account and find me at What's Right Sam. Just Google or search in there, in the toolbar. What's Right Sam. Okay. Could this happen? And the short answer is yes. Of course, it's nothing about hate. The Canadians don't have a First Amendment. This is all about stomping out political opposition in Canada and eliminating the means by which Canadian separatists in Alberta, for example, are communicating with each other. They're using Twitter. You know what happened over the weekend? I mean, this was wild. There's a reason this press conference happened on Sunday. There was an enormous rally in Edmonton, in Alberta, a separatist rally. It's gaining steam. It could be a real thing that happens. And so Mark Carney is seeing this populism spreading across the country, opposition to his rule even before he gets started. Now, he doesn't even get a majority of the votes. He's got a minority government. They have to, form a coalition with the NDP, probably, whom they'll likely stab in the back as well. Regardless, he's in a precarious political situation. So what do dictators and wannabe dictators do when they feel that the voice of the people may soon drown them out? Well, they start banning people from speaking. Whenever you hear hate speech, okay, this is just simply code for having speech removed from the internet that you don't like, that someone doesn't like, that a particular political party doesn't like. Hate speech could very well be people supporting Trump. Hate speech could be people saying, like was in the news in the last 24 hours, that these ice caps up in the North Pole are rebonding. They're all in Antarctica. Icebergs are starting to demelt. They're freezing up again. They're growing. The ice pack is increasing. But that's hate speech because that's climate denialism. That could lead to irresponsible things like opting out of turning your whole existence over to green initiatives. Could get really wild. Or perhaps saying like, maybe we shouldn't invite terrorists into the country. Also hate speech. Deeply problematic stuff, this First Amendment. All right, folks, I'll see you tomorrow. Sam Mirejovsky, News Talk 840, KXNT.